Years ago, I moved into a small rental house tucked away at the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood. It wasn't much, but the rent was cheap. The property backed onto a thick patch of woods, which only added to the house's charm, or so I thought. At first, everything seemed perfect. The house was peaceful, the neighbors were distant, and the woods offered a sense of privacy I'd been craving. I often left the back door open, letting the cool breeze carry the scent of pine and earth through the house. But soon, I began to notice small things that didn't sit right. One night, while cleaning up after dinner, I glanced out the kitchen window. The backyard was dark, save for the faint glow of the porch light. Just as I turned back to the sink, something caught my eye. A shadow moving at the tree line. I froze, staring out into the darkness. It was too far to make out details, but there was definitely someone standing just beyond the edge of the light. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaky. The figure didn't move. It stood there, barely distinguishable from the trees, as if it were waiting. I closed and locked the door, telling myself it was probably a trick of the light or maybe a deer. The woods were full of animals after all. Still, I double-checked all the locks before heading to bed. Over the next few weeks, the unease grew. I started hearing strange noises at night, soft rustling, faint taps on the windows, and sometimes the sound of footsteps crunching through the leaves. Every time I went to investigate, there was nothing there. Then came the gifts. One morning, I stepped out onto the porch and found a small pile of stones neatly stacked in the center of the steps. Another day, it was a single feather, positioned upright, as if placed with care. Once, it was a bundle of twigs tied with a piece of red string. I convinced myself it was a neighborhood kid playing pranks, but deep down, I felt like someone, or something, was watching me. One evening, I decided to take a walk into the woods, hoping to find some answers. I followed a narrow path that twisted through the trees, the air growing colder with every step. The silence was unnerving. No birds, no insects, just the sound of my own footsteps. I stumbled upon a small clearing. At its center stood a strange structure, a crude makeshift hut made from branches and leaves. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. Curiosity won over fear, and I stepped closer. Inside, I found something that made my stomach drop, a pile of photographs. They were of me. Some were taken through the windows of my house, others while I was out in the yard. There was even one of me sleeping in my bed. My heart pounded as I flipped through the pictures. That's when I heard it. The crunch of a footstep behind me. I spun around, my heart racing. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the trees. Silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the woods, came a low, deep laugh. It was slow, deliberate, and far too close for comfort. I didn't wait to see who or what was watching me. Dropping the photographs, I bolted back down the path, branches clawing at my arms and face. The sound of footsteps followed me, heavy and deliberate, matching my own pace. When I finally burst out of the woods and into my backyard, the footsteps stopped. I turned around, but the tree line was empty. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I called the police. An officer came by, took my statement, and walked with me into the woods. When we reached the clearing, the hut was gone. No photographs, no evidence, just an empty patch of dirt. The officer suggested I install cameras and keep the doors locked. It was clear he didn't believe me, but I followed his advice anyway. For a while, the cameras gave me peace of mind. Nothing unusual showed up, and I started to feel like I might have imagined the whole thing. Then one morning, I checked the footage from the night before. Most of it was uneventful, just the occasional sway of tree branches in the wind. But around 3 a.m., the motion sensor was triggered. A figure stepped into the yard, walking with a slow, deliberate gait. It stopped just outside the porch light's reach and stared at the house. The figure stayed there for nearly an hour, unmoving, before slipping back into the woods. My blood ran cold when I realized it had been standing just feet from my bedroom window. I stopped sleeping after that. Every night, I sat in the living room with all the lights on, clutching my phone and a kitchen knife. The nights were long, filled with the constant fear of seeing that figure again. One night, I woke to the sound of glass shattering. I jumped to my feet, heart racing, and grabbed the knife. The sound had come from the living room. As I crept down the hallway, I noticed something odd. The back door was wide open. My first instinct was to run, but something compelled me to look. Standing in the doorway, there was the figure. It stepped forward, and for the first time, I saw its face. It wasn't human. Its skin was pale and stretched taut over its skull, its eyes black and sunken. Its mouth hung open, revealing jagged, yellowed teeth. It grinned at me. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember running. The next thing I knew, I was in my car, speeding down the road, leaving everything behind. I never went back to that house.